Good morning. And welcome everybody to this service of the Church of the Divine Unity in Newcastle. And to mark our transition from our day-to-day living activities to our worship, I invite Louise to light the chalice for us.
I might as well, after I've given something away of myself, I might as well give the subject of today's service away. It's See, Marvel, Learn. The sense or nonsense of holidays and travelling. And I would like to open up with the following words. Summer is upon us, and our thoughts turn to holidays and travelling. We feel that we need a holiday. The Germans call it to be ready for the island, since we are on an island that has to be refaced for us. And for most of us, that will mean a change of location. We leave our normal place of residence to go somewhere quite different. But what are we trying to escape from? And what are we trying to find at the other end? Never in history had so many people the opportunity to see so much of the earth we inhabit. But it is doubtful that we are more knowledgeable than previous generations. Something might have to change in us, with our holidays, our general way of living, or all of the above. Questions I would like to ponder together with you in our time together. And to start the worshipping properly, we can have no fitting hymn than number 191, to worship rightly, if we are on holiday or if we are here. Or if we are doing, I love new words, a staycation. I said it is centered on holidays and on traveling, and we not only travel for our holidays and gather new experience with this, we also travel because we asked to, by our job or by other demands. And I thought, what should we get as a reading? And I think one of the most famous journeys going rather not as planned is in the Old Testament, and it's the story of Jonah. And I thought, since Tom chauffeured me up here, he also gets the privilege to read it to you.
Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai, saying, Go at once to Nineveh, that great city, and cry out against it, for their wickedness hath come up before me. But Jonah set out to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish, so he paid his fare and went on board to go with them, away from the presence of the Lord. But the Lord hurled a great wind upon the sea, and such a mighty storm came upon the sea, that the ship threatened to break up. Then the mariners were afraid, and each cried to his God. He threw the cargo that was in the ship into the sea, to lighten it for them. Jonah, meanwhile, had gone down into the hold of the ship, and had lain down, and was fast asleep. The captain came and said to him, What are you doing, sound asleep? Get up, call on your God. Perhaps the God will spare us a thought, so that we do not perish. The sailors said to one another, Come, let us cast lots, so that we may know on whose account this calamity has come upon us. So they cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. Then they said to him, Tell us why this calamity has come upon us. What is your occupation? Where do you come from? What is your country? And of what people are you? I am a Hebrew, he replied. I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. Then the men were even more afraid, and said to him, What is this that you have done? For the men knew that he was fleeing from the presence of the Lord, because he had told them so. Then they said to him, What shall we do to you, that the sea may quieten down for us? For the sea was growing more and more tempestuous. He said to them, Pick me up and throw me into the sea. Then the sea will quieten down for you. For I know it is because of me that the great storm has come upon you. Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to bring the ship back to land, but they could not, for the sea grew more and more stormy against them. Then they cried out to the Lord, Please, O Lord, we pray, do not let us perish on account of this man's life. Do not make us guilty of innocent blood. For you, O Lord, have done it as it pleased you. So they picked Jonah up and threw him into the sea, and the sea ceased from its raging. Then the men feared the Lord even more, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows. But the Lord provided a large fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Then Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the belly of the fish, saying, I called to the Lord out of my distress, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. You cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the flood surrounded me. All your waves and your billows passed over me. Then I said, I am driven away from your sight. How shall I look again upon your holy temple? The waters closed in over me. The deep surrounded me. Weeds were wrapped around my head. At the roots of the mountain I went down to the land, whose bars closed upon me forever. Yet you brought up my life from the pit. O Lord my God, as my life was ebbing away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you, into your holy temple. Those who worship vain idols forsake the true Lord. But I, with a voice of thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed, I will pay. Deliverance belongs to the Lord. Then the Lord spoke to the fish, and it spewed Jonah out upon the dry land.
Thank you, Tom. When we discussed that, me and Tom, I thought, you could read it a bit in a modern way. Jonah was this geezer and he was on supply preaching, and he got a text message from God, go to Nineveh. They are a really hard lot there. Anybody who has ever been in a teaching or preaching function knows, especially in teaching, there's 8b or 10c or whatever digit and number and letters they have. And they have already eaten up the regular teacher and 2 supply teachers, and you don't want to go. So Jonah decided, nah, not for me. So he sent the text back, and as a commitment, God, I can't do it. And then he got on his boat to escape. And then the boat got into difficult waters and in a too difficult situation, and Jonah said to himself, I shouldn't have booked with that budget company. I know there is no good in that one. And it didn't help. And he was thrown overboard and ended up in a whale. And Jonah was sold on a boat. He wasn't actually reachable because there was no network for God to send messages. Did something very old-fashioned. He prayed. He discovered that you don't need a mobile phone to talk to God. And he also found out that however perilous the task might seem, avoiding the task might be even more perilous. It's a lesson to be learned for all of us when we have something hard in front of us. But we always want smooth journeys, and I think I can't not do the Irish blessing for a good journey. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rain fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. So if you have any journeys ahead of you, then you might take that with you. And at your own personal lines, may the queue at the customs not be too long. May the delays not too be significant. And whatever you would like to add to it. But sometimes we do something which I might call a double journey. That we have to be somewhere and we absolutely don't want to be there, just like Jonah. But where we are disgruntled about it as well. And that's an immensely short poem by Bertolt Brecht, The Changing of the Wheel. I sit at the roadside, the driver changes the wheel. I don't like where I'm coming from. I don't like where I'm going to. Why do I see the changing of the wheel with impatience? And when we are impatient, we don't do us a favor. Very often we just get impatient, and the impatience takes so much over that we don't see that whatever befalls us, the world is still beautiful around us. And it is a world which is changing, but not all the changes we see are bad changes. So to honor the beautiful world we have and we can create, let us sing our second hymn, number 209 of World Transfigured. Let us now join in the prayer of the Carpenter Prophet, the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. So, from the words of the Lord's Prayer to the words of the aforementioned Brecht, who has written something which I like a lot, and it is actually called I've Heard You Don't Want to Learn, because I said in the title, See, Marvel, Learn, because from every journey
we should bring something back, which I call a mental souvenir. And we have learned something, however large or small that might be. But some people, and they are not the ones who aren't particularly well travelled, but some people always go with their set ideas. It has to be like that. And why don't they serve English breakfast all over the world since it's the best breakfast? And all sorts of other things. So sometimes there is an insistence on not wanting to learn. And this is what the following text deals with. I've heard you don't want to learn. Therefore, I come to the conclusion you're millionaires. Your future is secure. It stretches out before you in the light. Your parents have taken such good care of you that you don't even stub your toes on a stone. Then, it's natural. You don't have to learn. You can remain just as you are. But just in case there are any difficulties, because the times, as I've heard, are very insecure, you have your leaders who will tell you exactly what you have to do so that everything will be well. They have consulted those who knows the truth, the eternally valid truth, and recipes which will always help. So therefore, you don't have to lift a finger. Because you have so many people in your corner. If it were to be different, just allow that thought, you would have to learn. Words probably written in the 1940s, but I still think applicable even nowadays. Now, the third hymn, you don't have to write, it has a long intro. The third hymn I've selected is Others Call It God. And it is actually one of my favorites. I have more than one favorite. I haven't got that many favorites as Tom has, but that is definitely one of my favorites. But I also wanted just these lines, Others Call It God, to use for some personal musings where you might encounter something which you think is quite aptly named God in the world as it is in 2018 around us. So these are my musings, and then we can all sing the hymn together. Others call it God. What can I call it? What can I call it when I manage to make peace with the really difficult people in my life? Not the ones I could call enemies, but the ones who manage to rub me up the wrong way, the irksome ones who always press the right spots. Is there a name for my new calm? What can I call it when I get overwhelmed by the beauty of nature, the changing of the seasons, the colourfulness of autumn, every stolen warm and pleasant day before the onset of winter? Are there words for my deep felt joys? What can I call it when I look at this globe with thousands, millions of people driven from their homes, some never making it to safety, others not being welcomed where they finally end up? But then
their mouth speaking words of welcome, hands reaching out with food and gifts, and arms open to embrace. Others might call it God. Sometimes I believe God might be the only word for it. So, and now you can all join in singing in 2, 3, 3. Others call it God. Now I like to start the sermon time with something which I call a guided meditation or reflection. And I thought, okay, that you build your fantasy island or your fantasy mainland or what. And then I thought, no, let's then do something else. I have to admit I recycle a lot from somewhere else. I was recently asked to be Hildegard von Bingen's Fire of the Spirit for a funeral, actually. And what I discovered was that the English versions were awfully short, and the other ones in other languages, including the German one, was much longer. So something as a bite. So I thought, okay, Hildegard von Bingen must be middle high. You can manage that. It's like, in a lot of aspects, like modern German with one spelling in it. Hildegard von Bingen did not do me the favor to write in middle high, like some of the other mystics. She actually had written in Latin. Now, I have actually Latin at school, but I mean, you just have to look at my grey hair coming through and you know it's a few years back. So what I have done is actually done a new version of Fire of the Spirit based on the modern German translation. And it's a wonderful text, and I've also developed something, some lines I would like you to think about, hence doing a mental journey, because Fire of the Spirit to me is a vision. O fire of the Spirit, life of all creatures, holy are you, because you make all creatures come to life. Holy are you, because you save the dangerously broken. Holy are you, because you heal the wounds. O tremendous flow which has permeated everything in the heights and on earth and in all the depths. You gather and unite us all. Protect those who are incarcerated and free the bound ones, because the divine power wants to keep them safe. Through you the clouds stream and the ether fly. The stones contain wetness. The waters form little brooks, and the earth strives forward its green. You always lift up your disciples, because the breath of wisdom delights them. Therefore you should be praised, you who are the sound of praise and the delight in life, the most powerful hope and honor, which gives us the gifts of light. So this is what I would like to present for you, just to let your own imagination flow. What is our spirit of life? Do you feel a fire within you, an ardent desire burning? Or do we look back to times when we were so much more enthusiastic? What or who can, might, will rekindle this life fire
within us. And who are the dangerously broken? Are we all dangerously broken? And does the idea of a dangerous brokenness lead to a universal salvation? Hildegard von Bingen writes about being united, held together. What does unite us, holds us together? A very apt question in the Church of the Divine Unity. And are we, even when we are seeking solitude, not looking for a deep and even deeper felt togetherness? The stones which contain wetness, and we had the biggest drought in decades. What a wonderful oxymoron. An oxymoron is a literary construction of something which actually can't be, like silent thunder. But it's so much more than just an oxymoron. Nothing is what it seems. Are we ready for the unexpected, the unstoppable force of life? We are the stepping stones for the future generation. Stones, hard, solid, people can step on it, but we also contain the wetness, the nourishment, the base of life is water. The disciples are delighted to receive the gift of learning. How often do we refuse to learn? Insight is healing. By learning, we are letting the light in. So, this is just a few things which came to my mind after the Hildegard von Bingen text. See if it ties in with your own reflection. See if it ties in with what I would like to present now. Visions are journeys of the mind and occur independent from our location, but they are elements common to our mental and our real journeys, one of which is our encounter of the unexpected, maybe even exotic. People always were fascinated by things they didn't know, and if there was not enough information, they made it up. During the age of the discoveries, that's the period after the discovery of Americans, so past 1492, people's imagination ran riot. There were pamphlets and early printed books in which you find description of the most wonderful, in the sense of magical, exotic creatures, human beings with checkered skin, coloured like a Carolina horse, and also other humans, and that would have been quite handy in the recent sunshine, which we had so much of, which had feet so large they could lie on their backs to have the sun umbrella integrated into their anatomy. People bought these things, people looked at those things, because they just wanted to know what was possible, what was there out there which they hadn't heard about it. When decades and centuries later, people believed in green little man from Mars, not so much different. But often traveling was a privilege for the rich, because poor people just couldn't afford it. They neither were given the time off, nor did they have the finances. But that doesn't mean they weren't yearning for worlds and things they hadn't seen. And that was actually the origin of our botanical gardens and zoos. It was to bring something from the exotic home. And I love botanical gardens. I'm not so sure about the caged animals, but what I absolutely love in the botanical gardens is when I go around and I see these things, and they're bigger than what I have in my house. But I had a lot of those as houseplants. And I say, oh, I had one of those, or yes, I still have got one of those. And I feel privileged that what was once something almost unreachable, something which was handled as a rarity, is now part of my personal life. I think walking around the botanical garden can be quite a spiritual experience. And when they first came up, they attracted much larger number of visitors. There is actually a form of travelling which was not so restricted to the village, and that's pilgrimages. Pilgrimages, even in historic times, were open to a much wider circle of people. As a pilgrim, you made an active contribution to your own salvation in this life and the other. Pilgrims helped and helped each other, which will be also one of the explanations why we see a lot of researching popularity for the pilgrimages nowadays, like the most famous one nowadays, the Camino, the pilgrimage to Santiago to Compostela. But Muslims on the Hajj, for instance, there is the command that if somebody struggles, somebody needs food, somebody needs shelter, other people have to help that person because he or she is on the Hajj. There are always dangers on the way. Pilgrimage, any other journey, and even the modern day travelers might have feelings of trepidation concerning all sorts of things, like possible terrorist attacks, or just the unpleasantness of being stuck in a major motorway traffic jam. You find motorway chapels and airport chapels, and they might not be heeding with visitors, but they are places which are actually see people coming in to deal with their fears, to have a bit of time out from their worries and to collect themselves. I recently saw actually a Catholic Mass on television celebrated in a motorway chapel which was dedicated to St. Christopher. They have not retained that much of the Mass, but what I was most impressed was the little tower which was outside the chapel, which is a concrete sculpture, and that is like a monster made of like a car and other machine parts around it on the bottom, and St. Christopher on top. I let you come to an interpretation of that one, but I found it actually rather touching. Now we assume your journey lies behind you, and you might enjoy the freedom of a holiday. The freedom is also the freedom from a fixed image. The Swiss author Max Frisch speaks in You Shouldn't Create an Image about the fact that we always have images how the other person is. We might alter those images, but we have images. And sometimes that restricts what the other person can do. And on a holiday, you actually are in a situation where you are removed from a fixed image. And you can be anybody you want to be to the people you might encounter. And that is also an opportunity to develop a little bit of the persona you would like to be. But there is another angle worth considering. It's not only what other people are thinking of us, it's what us does think of them, and what we think about the things, the whole new environment we encounter. We might look down on people from previous centuries, like missionaries and explorers who had their preconceived ideas. And I'm not denying we have moved on, but how far have we moved on? And how open, with all the knowledge which is so easily accessible to us nowadays, are we actually? The Guardian recently ran the following story. In Japan, 85 kilometers south of Osaka, is a monastery, a center of the Shingon Buddhist sect, which recently opened its gates for the tourists. Some of the visitors complained almost instantly about the food being basic and vegetarian. American-born Shingon priest Daniel Kimura thought that was like criticizing a steakhouse for serving too much meat. Unfortunately, he expressed his deep pleasure in far less delicate language. Uneducated for which he later apologized. I wouldn't put the full word in, but I was advised by Tom that would be against church etiquette. Actually, he could have made some money because he has a swear box in his church. 50 pence is cheap. Get me right. I'm not speaking of people who are genuinely homesick, which I consider actually not a disrespect to your new environment, but more a gratitude for the environment you come from. What I'm against is this stubborn insistence on ignorance. If you're ignorant and then you say, but I'm right, I believe that, therefore it must be right. Leave that to Trump, he does it quite well. But the refusal to learn. For working well together in a world transfigured, in a shrinking world, where we are closer to each other than we ever were, this is an attitude we can ill afford. How much better would it be if we hung on to positive impressions and experiences, so that when our souvenirs are consumed or forgotten, collecting dust in some dark corner, you have still something which remains with you almost forever. I have a Swiss friend, Jean-Claude, who's a very well-travelled man. He's a trade union rep, and that has sent him quite over the planet, but he also likes travelling. And if he travels by himself without his family, from wherever he is, he brings bread and salt back to his family, thus affirming a common bond with humanity. I think that is very nice. Holidays are not only marred by our lack of openness. Many people complain that they can't properly switch off. We live in a 24/7 world, And it is increasingly difficult to establish boundaries. Sometimes it's very good if you are so unreachable, like in the Valley of the Whale, so that work can't call you and say, couldn't you just think over this problem and give us your opinion about that one? Some years ago, I have participated in a workshop which was actually run by a Reformed Jewish lady who spoke absolutely enthusiastically about re-establishing the Sabbath. And she said, if you can't take Sunday off, then have your Sabbath on the Tuesday, but have one. You need time and space where it is your time and that is not egoistical, and you can recharge your batteries to tackle the outside world afterwards. Now, I could not finish this sermon without resorting to something which I call a story for all ages, and it's Janos, How Wonderful is Panama. It's actually a children's book, which adults like too. And they have the little bear and the little tiger in there. And they're two very content little people in their nice little house. But they get the idea that they would like to go to Panama, because they have heard Panama is so wonderful. So they lock the household, they sort of make the little bundles, and off they go. And they meet all sorts of other animals who give them advice how they best get to Panama. After a long journey, they come somewhere where it is really nice, and where there is a really nice little house, not unlike the one they have left behind. A few more cobwebs, a bit more dust, but that can be rectified. And they are so glad that they are now in wonderful Panama. Travelers who haven't learned, a story about the futility of travel. No. Because, first and foremost, they were very courteous to all the other creatures they have encountered. They've taken their advice. They weren't blinkered or anything. Secondly, they came on foot. Very good for the carbon footprint. And sometimes you just need to go away to appreciate what is always around you. Now that is my version. If you want the hyper version, I give you 4 lines. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Here's Eliot. Many modern pilgrims on the Camino make similar experiences. And if it's only like a daughter of a Lutheran Protestant minister who has done the Camino as a child and then as a grown woman by herself as a child with a family. And when she came the second time back from the Camino, we were at her parents' house, and she exclaimed how wonderful England was inside. There is gratitude for you. Don't knock it. And now I've raised the topic of mental souvenirs. I've recently come back from a holiday in Tenerife, where we visited the oldest church on the island. It's a very impressive church. It's about the same time when almost all over Europe you had Baroque. So you had whites and golds and pale blues. In this church you have dark wood and silver. Masses of silver, because it's a conquistadores church. Now, I don't know if I
was spiritually touched by the place. Not that much, actually. But what came through my mind was that I could imagine some of the conquistadores kneeling in this church. And maybe they felt a certain pride that all sort of the splendor was actually something they had contributed to. But most likely, they would have prayed that the next journey wouldn't be too perilous and the natives not too nasty on the other side to them. And also the one thing they would have had to do is leave all their weapons outside the church door. Now, I know nobody came in with a sword, and I mean, probably nothing sharper than a penknife you might have on to you. But let's face it. Haven't we often entered churches mentally armed? Just to have it out with that person before the service, or over coffee, or have it out when we come home from church with somebody. So mentally armed, a mental disarmament before you enter a church is a good ritual, and I strive to practice it every time I enter one. I tell you at a later point how successful I will do it with that one. But now I think I have told you enough, and it's time for the collection and the notices. And thank you for listening.